I am Lieutenant Colonel Richard. Someone take a video of me doing this?
Like this or like that?
Like this. Like that, huh?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht. I'm the IDF International Spokesperson. Since Monday, after we understood what happened here and we have managed to bring in the international press, I have been on a personal crusade to show the world what happened here, to show the scale of this ISIS massacre. Hamas is ISIS. That's the mindset. I'm very emotional. I took all the international journalists to see Kfar Aza. We walked in the houses of these families. We saw the bodies. We saw the carnage. Be'eri, the kibbutz, 2 days ago. Last night, Re'im. And today we brought you here. Full of cargo, full of bodies. Hundreds of bodies. Babies, children. Why are we doing this? It's not what we usually do. But I know that from tomorrow the world is going to call us war criminals again. We do not attack children. Hamas uses their children and families and civilians as human shields. We don't do that. It's important that the world sees this. You saw it in your own eyes. When we opened that door, you saw body parts, children and people. The world has to see this.
Why do you say tomorrow the world is going to call you war criminals? Is something happening tomorrow?
No, nothing's happening tomorrow. We are now striking severely in Gaza. And the Hamas are telling their people, we're telling the people to move, and the people are not moving. They're saying don't move. And that's how people get killed.
But is it possible for them to move?
Come again?
I mean, is it possible for that many people to move that quickly?
Well, we never say the time frame. We understand it will take time. We understand that it will take time.
We heard reports it was 24 hours, but maybe that's incorrect.
That's from the UN report. We understand it's taking time. That's happening in other areas of activity. I'm talking about the military and what our missions are right now. Our missions are to take care of our loved ones, to take care of the casualties, not only the military casualties, also civilians. And we are now doing an offensive against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And we'll do whatever it takes to destroy their capabilities, so this thing never happens again. In here, it's a mix of also military personnel and also civilians, yes.
When you say you're taking your time, you take time for the evacuation. How long are you going to wait?
We're looking at it. We have ISR activity there, and we're aware. But again, the Hamas right now have told their people to stay, not to move. That is part of their cynical methods.
People are afraid that there is a possibility that the Israeli army is entering Gaza. Is that possibility? Do we know when?
I'm not talking about our future plans. I think the majority of bodies are out, but I'm sure there's, again, because the numbers are so big. Right now we were still engaged. I was there yesterday in Re'im. When I was there with journalists, there was fighting. So there's still, the area is a hot zone, it's a war zone. There could still be people dead, and it'll take us some time.
But the majority of the bodies are now here or in airport city?
Yes, the majority of the bodies are here in airport city.
Okay, and here you do the analysis?
Yes, we do it because a lot of people were burnt and put on fire. That's why we asked for DNA. That's the holy work that's happening inside that cage. We won't be like Hamas and show you our dead bodies. That's not what the Jewish people do.
Sorry, do you do inquiry for trying more trial?
We'll get to all these things. Right now we're fighting.
What are your results?
I'm right now on a personal crusade since Saturday to show this to the world. So I'm using all my assets.
Are you angry?
Yes, I am. I'm using all my assets within my small unit as the international press to mobilize as much data to the world. Why? Because I know where we're going to be attacked with from tomorrow.
Do you believe that this image is an excuse? Do you believe that this image is an excuse for an attack, military attack?
No, we don't take revenge. That's not what Israel does. We are going to go after military targets with precise intelligence. We're not going to go all out. We don't go like Hamas. We don't target civilians. It's going to be a precise military operation. That's what we're doing now, based on intelligence.
Does your office have concerns about the level of misinformation and certain things being claimed and then
Well, the PR fake fact. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
There'll be a campaign that Hamas are very good at. Already Al Jazeera came out yesterday with someone they released that turning them into humanitarian, turning the Hamas into humanitarian fighters.
When you say a special military operation, do you mean only by airplanes, aircraft?
Can't talk about what our plans are.
We saw lots of troops gathering in order.
איזה מכולה? אתה לא תראה. לא, זה לא מה שאנחנו עושים.
We saw lots of troops gathering in Urim.
ראית שקיות, ראית זה, ראית רבנים. אתה חושב שזה פעם מדע?
לא מבקש לראות דברים נוראים, אבל אם הזמנתם אותנו הנה, למה? בשביל לשים כזה?
לא, מה פתאום?
אז אתה...
If you're just now tuning into Live Now from Fox, you're getting an update out there in Israel as Israeli Defense Forces give an update amid unidentified bodies. And you heard him mention, we are not Hamas. We will not show you the dead bodies. But if you're wondering where those unidentified bodies are, they're right there in those trailers behind you. And you can see they're lined up, just putting things into perspective about the casualties because of the war in Israel. On the right side of your screen, breaking news as protests have erupted in the Middle East, specifically in Yemen. And then that bottom box, live, raw, and unfiltered, as clashes in the West Bank continues. You see people out there waving flags and setting things on fire with face masks. And then on the left side of your screen again, you see this. They're continuing to pan and show you all of those trailers that have bodies in there. It's unimaginable to think about the families that don't even know where their loved ones are and could potentially be in those trailers, and they don't even know if they are in there because many of those bodies have been so bruised and burned and butchered that they can't even recognize their loved ones. They're actually about to open up those trailers and show the bodies in the body bags. I know that'll be difficult for many people to watch, so we're not going to show that here on Live Now, but just so you know what you're seeing and putting everything into context. Good morning to you. If you're just now tuning in to Live Now from Fox, I'm Jeanne Francine. We've made it to Friday. It is October 13th. Friday the 13th if you are a superstitious person, but nevertheless, it is Friday for those of you that don't work on the weekends. You are closer to having the weekend to yourself. 9:07 on the East Coast, 6:07 on the West Coast. Let's go ahead and go to our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour. And when we come back, getting right back into your live events, top stories, and headlines. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. So happy you're waking up with us here on this Friday, October 13th. Let's continue the conversation regarding the war in Israel. Let's show you a live picture coming through on our screens, what some people are calling breaking news, as this is something that has just happened coming in through our studios within the past hour. You can see those protests erupting in the Middle East as the war in Israel rages on. Specifically on your screen, we're looking at this protest in Yemen. We know tens of thousands of anti-Israel protesters took to the streets in the Middle East today to answer in Hamas's call for the day of rage. Large numbers of people in Yemen gathering in the capital there, protesting in solidarity with Gaza after their weekly Friday prayers. The demonstrators showing support for Palestinians as Israel has continued to bombard the Gaza Strip with those retaliatory airstrikes. This after Hamas massacred more than 1,300 Israelis in that horrific terror attack on Saturday. We all saw that happen here on Live Now from Fox. Israel telling Gaza citizens to evacuate to, quote, minimize civilian casualties in war against Hamas. Again, Israel standing firm that they have declared war on Hamas after the terror group executed the deadliest attack on the Jewish state in its history. Israeli officials saying more than 1,300 Israeli civilians were killed by Hamas. We do want to continue that conversation. As we know, as far as America is concerned, at least 27 Americans have been killed in Israel as this war continues to rage on. My colleague Andrew Kraft spoke with a national security expert to break all of this down. Let's listen in.
Answer my questions. No doubt some of them are probably your questions about all the complexities of the Israel-Hamas war now on day 6. Hal joins me now. Hal, good to see you. Thanks for being with us. I want to first start our conversation here about the hostage question, the hostage element, the IDF confirming really the number now, about 150 hostages. American officials believe some of those hostages are American citizens right now. And so I guess my question to you is, because President Biden was asked about this yesterday at the White House, about what the plan is to bring or extract these hostages, to get them back into Israel, to get them back into the United States. And he kind of said as much, that why would he tell that reporter asking? Why would he make this public, the plans in place to get these hostages back? So with that caveat, do we know a plan? Is there one? What do you think?
Well, Andrew, there kind of is and there isn't.
Okay.
All right. The overt plan right now, which is rather interesting, and certainly from what I understand of the law of war, it's perfectly reasonable, is if the Hamas, as the government of the Gaza Strip, turns over the hostages, they will turn on the electricity and the water. All right. So there's an offer that's on the table as part of a negotiation piece. The reality is Hamas isn't really talking to Israel. There is no real negotiation, but that is an overt thing on the table. The other side is the less overt or covert side, which is actually going in there and getting hostages out. That's one, if there is a plan or plans, they're not going to discuss that. In those types of operations, in extremis hostage rescue sort of operations, frankly, surprise is the biggest advantage that the rescuers have, and they simply won't discuss it. What I will say is that I think we're moving a lot of assets in there. We have 2 aircraft carriers in there. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that are moving into the area in close proximity. Certainly Israelis have a lot in there. And interestingly, the British are moving forces in there, an aircraft carrier and a contingent of Royal Marines, which I thought was kind of interesting. Okay. Royal Marine Commandos open up a new possible avenue of approach if they were to be used down south. Where they would be used would probably be along the water, and that kind of goes back to something you and I talked about, which is there might be other avenues, not just across land, but other avenues they might try to get in there, and it might turn out to be hostage rescue is a multinational effort.
Okay. Hal, I mean, some 2024 Republican presidential hopefuls like Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, They're calling for U.S. forces to be on the ground in Israel to get these hostages. And so you have that as well. Do you think that's ever going to come to pass?
Well, I will say this. The president right up said we don't want to put U.S. boots on the ground. Okay. And that's pretty much a standard thing we say in a lot of conflicts is we're not going to put U.S. boots on the ground. With that said, hostage rescue is a special operation. And it is by definition of raid. You go in and you get out. There's insertion and there's extraction with the hostage, hopefully, or hostages, hopefully, the people being rescued, I should say. And so it's not a permanent boots on the ground situation. I think a lot of it will depend on the intelligence. You know, who's, where, when, who can get in there, what capabilities are required.
Okay.
And if the Israelis ask us, particularly if it's rescuing an American, I can't imagine that we would turn around and say no.
All right. Hal, I want to move from these hostages that are still stuck in Gaza, potentially scattered all over the Gaza Strip, and we don't know where they are. There's about 150 of them. That's according to Israeli officials. But I want to talk about American citizens who are not held hostage. They're just in Israel right now trying to get back to the United States. I want to put this tweet up here. This is from Matthew Miller. He's the spokesman at the State Department. He says, starting tomorrow, we will arrange charter flights to assist U.S. citizens and their immediate family members who have been unable to book commercial transit and seek a safe means of departing Israel. John Kirby was asked about this today as well, Hal. He said, we are all acutely aware of limited availability right now in commercial flights out of Israel and the demand signal by U.S. citizens who may want to depart. He goes on to say the president has asked his team to ensure that we are assisting U.S. citizens who do want to leave Israel and providing them with a safe means of doing that. And Hal, he goes on to say, so beginning tomorrow, the U.S. government will arrange charter flights to provide transportation from Israel to sites in Europe. Now, Ben Gurion, the airport there is a massive international airport, and you've seen a lot of, especially U.S. carriers, pause departures and arrivals, I think, up until about December. And so we've even heard throughout the course of this war in the last 6 days that Hamas elements, possibly Hezbollah elements, were targeting Ben Gurion Airport.
It's an open target.
Okay.
One of the things is they saw this big surge of missiles, you know, which are not very accurate. But I got to tell you, even an inaccurate missile falling in and around an airport is enough to shut down air operations, particularly commercial air operations. So what you're seeing is a number of U.S. carriers, I believe United, American Airlines were amongst them, said, look, we're not going to fly into Ben Gurion Airport. Now, El Al, the Israeli state airlines, is still flying out of there. And one of the things, and they kind of alluded to that, and you know, I just recently flew back from the Mediterranean. One of the things they alluded to was flying to places in Europe. Those places could be, for example, into Italy, Greece, Germany. There's a number of key airports where they can basically link into regular airline operations, get them tickets, get them flights home. And that makes for a quicker turnaround. Instead of trying to fly them all the way back to the United States, you know, you fly them, you go in there, you get in there, your minimum amount of time on the land, on the ground, you load up, you get out of there as fast as you can, and then you drop them off at a closer airport somewhere in the Eastern Mediterranean possibly, and then turn around. And that way you get what we call a fast, usually we talk about this in terms of dropping bombs, but this would be a fast sortie rate. In other words, they're able to turn around faster. And in that regard, with whatever flight arrangement they may have, they could possibly get more Americans out of there faster by doing it that way. And that would be the operation I would anticipate. And the language today kind of reinforced that.
Hal, there's this report floating about by the Gateway Pundit, which is not that credible, but I do want to, because Jackie Heinrich is tweeting about this, Fox White House correspondent, saying that she's going to be asking U.S. officials about this report that I'm going to read the headline of, saying Biden regime is forcing Americans trapped in Israel to sign promissory notes to repay all travel costs if they decide to be rescued by the U.S. government. So this is what Jackie says about this. She says, we have been asking about this. Let me put this up here. She says, we have been asking about this, still waiting on a response. For what it's worth, U.S. law mandates departure assistance be provided on a reimbursable basis to the maximum extent practicable. But in the past, State Department has waived this. I don't want to give this too much oxygen, if we're just speculating here, but this is getting a lot of attention today, so much so that, White House reporters are having to ask U.S. officials about it. What do we make of it?
My guess is that last line, State Department has waived it in the past. My guess is that may be under U.S. law. I do a lot of travel on behalf of the government as a contractor, and there are some interesting things that are in there. But my guess is, due to the circumstances and certainly due to the political dynamics involved, that if there's anything, it'll be a very minimum fee. But my guess will be that State Department may just decide to just waive it and pay for it themselves.
Okay, yeah, because Secretary of State Blinken in Israel as we speak, very, very emotional meetings with some of these survivors of the massacre and some of these Israelis who don't know where their loved ones are because of this massacre as well. We'll be showing some of the viewers that a little bit later on tonight. It was quite moving there. We also know how that Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, he'll be in Israel tomorrow as well. So you're seeing multiple Biden cabinet officials travel to Israel to shore up support there as this, bombardment. The Associated Press used the word pulverize to describe what the Israeli Air Force and the IDF is doing right now to Hamas targets in Gaza. Is that accurate?
Well, two things are accurate. Number one, is you're going to see more people coming in. I even saw a thing today that President Zelensky out of Ukraine has talked about possibly going down to Israel, and has actually reached out across the world to say, world leaders should go to Israel to discuss this, to show support for Israel. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if that's going to pick up traction. But what I will say about the Israeli Air Force and what they're doing, they're shaping the battlefield, if you will. They're getting ready for really this incredibly difficult urban fight. And it's not just an urban fight, it's a littoral urban fight. It's right up against the water. And they're getting ready to go in there. There's a lot of civilians, 2.3 million civilians trapped in this dense space. And they're trying to figure out how they're going to do that. And as they identify targets that are tied to Hamas, and by the way, the early report talks about, Hamas changing out of uniforms into civilian clothes. Well, they're terrorists. They don't really care about wearing uniforms. They don't care about obeying the laws of war in terms of being properly uniformed to be identified on the battlefield. The same thing goes for wherever they set up shop. Wherever they put a headquarters, a munitions dump, a firing location, whatever, it's going to look like a residence, an apartment, an office building. They will put them deliberately right next to hospitals and other places that are normally protected sites under international law.
Yeah.
And it puts the Israelis in a very difficult situation because they have to figure out how to target them. So right now, Israel's targeting what they can target. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I have no doubt there's collateral damage, and everything indicates there has been. But they're trying to minimize the number of locations that they have to clear on the ground, and they're trying to shape the battlefield. And I can't speak for what they're doing inside, but they're probably looking at where Hamas is, where they'd like to force Hamas to go for various operations. And these are all considerations in targeting. And also they're trying to wear them down.
Okay.
If they haven't slept in 3 or 4 days or 6 days, makes it a lot easier if you're on the offense.
Yeah, Hal, you and I talk so much about the war in Ukraine and how Ukrainian forces have, eliminated some of these, Russian generals and commanders from the battlefield. What have you seen, though, now this in Gaza? Has some of the leadership structure, albeit we don't really have a good idea of what the Hamas leadership structure is, but has some of those Hamas members been decapitated, been neutralized, if you will? I've seen a lot.
Yeah, potentially. It's tough to tell because we don't have the same level of reporting that you have coming out of Ukraine. So we don't have the same assuredness of the information coming out. But, a number of the reports are the number of the leadership have gone to ground. Well, that could mean a number of things. In some cases, they may have gone to ground involuntarily, if you catch my drift, all right? They've been hitting these command and control targets, and I have no doubt that some of those leadership targets have been taken out. I also have no doubt that in their planning, they're looking at ground maneuver, and they may be looking at various different raids and stuff, specifically with the idea of decapitating command and control of those on the ground. And if they can get, look, Hamas is not terribly organized on a good day. This thing was very extraordinary that they pulled off. But even then, if you look at how it rolled out, they were very organized right up to the point that they got into Israel. And then if you look at how they actually conducted a lot of these attacks, they really, once they went in there, they were bloodthirsty, barbaric,
right?
But they weren't terribly organized. And I think that lack of cohesion has probably followed them back into the Gaza. In fact, I have no doubt that the top leadership of Hamas probably doesn't know where all the hostages are. So they may not even be able to actually round them up to turn them over if they were so inclined. That's how disorganized they are.
All right. Hal, we'll leave it at that. This is the bottom of the hour, a little past. We want to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, though, we'll be getting your thoughts.
So I appreciate my colleague there, Andrew Kraft, giving us the very latest. As unfortunate news, at least 27 Americans have been killed because of this war against Israel. Let's go ahead and go to a quick 2-minute commercial break. And when we come back, we're actually going to dip into some breaking news that we're following. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. Good morning to you. If you're just now tuning in on this Friday, it is October 13th, 9:27 on the East Coast, 6:27 on the West Coast. Let's get to this breaking news I was telling you all about before the break. On your screen, a live look of New York City, and this relates to the breaking news that the New York Police Department and Transit Police are giving an update on this increased police presence on their subway system during these tensions. We do know that Hamas released a statement saying today is the day of rage, putting people across the world on alert. Let's listen in raw and unfiltered as New York police are giving this update.
That presence is there to deter anyone from even thinking of doing anything, and really to reassure the public that we're here for them. So with that, I'll turn it right back to
I just want to, before I turn the mic over to Chief Mueller, I just want to note that Chief Mueller just happened to be at a counterterrorism police convention in Israel on the day of the Hamas attack. He was in Ashdod, which is barely 10 miles away from Gaza. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Mueller to talk about the MTA PD's deployment, including on the commuter rails, but I just wanted to note thank you for your service and also for your courage together with your colleagues in international policing at that moment.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. So as Chief Kemper said and Chairman Lieber said, we are increasing our presence and our visibility. This is about giving a comfort level to our ridership. We will have additional assets that you will see, and we will also have assets that you do not see. And the public should know that we are managing and intaking as much intelligence as we can by the minute and making sure that we have the right portfolio of strategy to keep our terminals and our subways and our commuter railroads safe.
All right, questions? Yeah, on the way, New York Times. Go ahead.
I've seen, some more police officers in Times Square, and I'm just curious, can you talk at any level of detail about what exactly is changing?
To be quite frank, not much is changing. Maybe an increased level to reassure the public. We do this every day. We coordinate with our partners at the MTA, Chief Mueller and I, between the NYPD, the MTA police. Chief Mueller mentioned before that there's going to be a uniform element to it, and there's going to be an invisible element to it also with plainclothes. So, again, this is just really to reassure the ridership that we hear from and to deter anything. So this is kind of business as usual for us.
Roger?
I just want to add that as Chief Kemper made clear to me yesterday, they have you've got a uniform presence at a higher level than has normally been the case.
Yeah.
And so that people who normally work plainclothes desk jobs are now out in uniform participating in this action to convey a sense of security and also to have additional personnel available.
Yep. So let me just key on that. So really the only thing that's changing is just like the chair said and what I said before, an increased level. It's all hands on deck. Whoever's working today in the NYPD is in uniform. This isn't secret. We spoke about this. We were transparent about it. And this is all about increasing our presence and our footprint around the city, not only in the subway system, but around the city as a deterrent and to reassure the public that we're here for.
Can you share numbers?
No, we're not going to talk numbers. No.
All right, Roger Stern, 1010 wins over.
Yeah, can you, I know you say not much has changed, but maybe you can give us a little more specifics. What's going to look at all different to the traveling public?
Like I said before, what's going to look different is an increased level of police presence. Look, you walk around Grand Central, we have National Guard members here, brave individuals, right, New Yorkers. We have the New York State Police, you have the NYPD, you have the MTA, you have all these different agencies working together in lockstep. And again, this is what we do all the time, just an increased level of uniform presence in and around the subway system. Again, there are no credible threats, but to just reassure our riders and as a prevention method, that's why you're going to see this.
All right, Andrew, WNBC.
Two questions. One, on the idea of a credible threat, when you're 6 days after a terrorist attack in Israel, before which there was no credible threat, how do you explain to the public that there's no credible threat when you have Hamas through supporters putting out statements that today's a day of action and please show maximum aid?
Look, we have an incredible counterterrorism intelligence division in the NYPD, and the New Yorkers should be count their blessings with that. We're in constant communication on the leadership team in the NYPD with our counterparts in counterterrorism and intel. And if something changes or if a threat becomes, they become aware of a threat, obviously we'll shift and we'll pivot. But as of right now, as I speak to you right now, again, we are well aware of the events transpiring around the world. We're aware of the events that occurred already in New York City. But there are no credible threats to New York City and the New York City subway system to inflict any harm on New Yorkers. Again, if that were to change, we would pivot immediately, and we have more than enough assets and resources to get that done.
And a quick follow-up with Chief Mueller, since Jano mentioned this, can you describe what was happening when you were in Israel, that close to Gaza on Saturday?
Sure. So the question was, the feeling that we had when this attack occurred on October 7th, and I think I would describe it with one word, surreal. So we awoke to air raid sirens early in the morning, and then there was heavy bombing. I think Hamas had said 5,000 rockets. I think Israelis looked at about 2,000 to 3,000 rockets. That went on for 4 or 5 hours. We were in the city of Ashdod, which is about 10 to 12 miles away from Gaza, so we were close. We watched the Iron Dome in action. We watched the Iron Dome shoot rockets out of the sky. We saw the incredible courage and support of the Israeli people, who were all there for each other, resolute, determined, absolutely horrified like the rest of the world, but absolutely resolute and supportive of each other.
Yeah, Doug, Chief Bowler, did that experience give you at all a different perspective to coming back and dealing with what you're calling not a credible threat, but still an increased presence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What the Israeli people are going through right now, we don't want ever to happen by any means or measure here in the United States. So law enforcement, federal partners, state partners, local partners, overseas assets are going to do everything they can to make sure that we have every bit of intelligence we have, and we're target hardened, and we're vigilant, and we're ready to go.
All right, Greg, go ahead. Greg Mocker.
You ask people to see something, say something. What kind of stuff should we be looking for? How do you get recorded? And what are you going to do if you get a call? You could get a lot of someone seeing something they think is unsuspicious.
Listen, I'm going to ask Chief Kemper to talk about how the NYPD evaluates things. But the bottom line is 911 is where those evaluations of the seriousness of any situation take place, and they are experienced. They do it every day, all day. So if God forbid there is a condition that is alarming or gives people concern about safety issues, call 911. That's always the first move, Chief Kemper.
So we talk about our partnership with the community and our ridership all the time, and we say that this is a team effort. It really is a team effort. And we ask if anyone sees anything suspicious. If you look at anything, unattended package, something that looks off to you in any way, we ask that you call 911 or you just find a police officer. Look, you're walking around. We're in Grand Central right now. There are police all over the place. Let an officer know. The officer will come and triage that device or that package. We have access to emergency service unit, bomb squad, God forbid, that they could come, triage it, and clear it. So I think the takeaway from this is if you see anything that concerns you, let us know. Don't walk away and second guess yourself. Let us know. Let us respond. Let us triage what that device is or what that package is or whatever the item is. And we have the assets, we have the offices, and we have the personnel to clear that item. So
they did in front of PICS this morning, Greg. Your security called them about a package, and they took care of it the same way that the chief was talking. All right, Evan, last question. We've got time for one more. From the Daily News.
So you guys have said there's no credible threat. This is to sort of allow ridership to get more comfortable given the atmosphere. How much of this is based on intelligence versus how much of this is based on social media rumors? Or is that not a fair thing to make?
I didn't hear your question. I'm sorry.
Sorry. How much of this is based on intelligence and how much of this is based on social media rumors going wild? Or is that not fair to think?
No, we base our deployment on a lot of different things. So I would say it's based on that and more. Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Evan? Thank you.
I just want to emphasize again that you're not just seeing these two operations upstairs, State Police and National Guard. Governor Hochul asked them to join us at these major transportation facilities, and the riders are seeing it.
All right, thanks, everybody. Thank you. What are the commuter railroads? Are they included? Will that be local? All right, do you want to take that? Because they were just upstairs looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. The MTAPD polices the commuter railroads with support where appropriate from the NYPD, and we have very heavy MTAPD presence in the commuter railroad facilities throughout the system, especially at Grand Central, Madison, the Long Island Railroad Terminal, as well as Metro North.
Will they be riding the trains?
They're always riding the trains.
We are always riding the train. We have train patrols. We've increased train patrols. And this, again, is an effort to ensure the public that we are where we need to be. We're actively managing this. They will be active. They will be engaged. And the commuter railroads are going to be well taken care of.
All right, thanks, everybody. Thank you.
I'm gonna go down to the road
If you're just now tuning in to Live Now from Fox, that press are wrapping up in New York City as officials gave that security update amidst Hamas's day of rage threat. Several areas across the world on high alert, even schools here in America deciding not to open their doors today and have armed guards posted outside. Today is Friday, October 13th. It's 9:39 on the East Coast, 6:39 on the West Coast. Let's go ahead and go to our second 2-minute commercial break of the hour. When we come back, getting right back into those live events, top stories, and headlines. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. Let's take another live look outside in New York City. There it is on your screen, a beautiful picture this morning as the sun is up and you can see beautiful blue skies. Before the break, we heard from NYPD and transit police out there in New York. They gave an update on the increased police presence along their subway system during these tensions, as we do know that Hamas did declare today as the day of rage several heightened alerts. Actually, the New York Governor Kathy Hochul and the Mayor Eric Adams gave an update hours ago last night as far as it relates to their plans for security measures. Let's listen into their remarks, as we do know that New York has one of the largest populations of Jewish people in the world. Let's listen in.
Workers. To keep you informed about these efforts, we are joined today by New York City Mayor Eric Adams, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, NYPD Commissioner Edward Caban, New York State Commissioner for Homeland Security and Emergency Services Jackie Bray, multiple additional members of the NYPD, and Schools Chancellor David Banks. First, we will hear from Mayor Eric Adams.
Thank you, and I want to thank the governor for really her leadership and partnership as we ensure that all New York's state residents are safe, and we're going to continue to coordinate together. We know the entire world is horrified by the attacks the terrorist organization Hamas has made on our brothers and sisters in Israel. And we are deeply disturbed by the message of hate, urging violence in other communities in this region and around the world. It is not acceptable. And I want every New Yorker, especially Jewish New Yorkers and other groups, to know there are currently no credible or specific threats against our city. But with large-scale protests planned for tomorrow, we must remain vigilant. New York City is the most diverse city in the world. And protecting our residents is the most sacred responsibility that we have. We have directed the NYPD to surge additional resources to schools, houses of worship, to ensure that they are safe and that our city remains a place of peace. We're also stepping up NYPD patrols in other key neighborhoods to help protect all of our city residents. New York City will do whatever it takes to keep our people safe. And if New Yorkers see something, we're saying to you, do something by reaching out to your local authorities. New York City rejects terrorism. We reject hate. We stand united, and we mourn the innocent lives taken in these attacks. Let us pray for the safe return of those captured and for all those on both sides suffering the horrors of wars. We will be united together. And again, I want to thank this team, and I want to thank the governor of the state of New York for her leadership at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we'll hear from Governor Kathy Hochul. Governor.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. And once again, the two of us have been strong partners as we work to protect the public safety of all New Yorkers. And this past week has been one of unimaginable heartbreak. These attacks on innocent civilians, babies, children, grandmothers that have now unleashed a spiral of violence. We've all watched in horror and anguish as we saw so many of our own residents affected deeply, some who are over there still in harm's way. And it's a fear even within our city limits in our state that people never expected to feel again so soon. And I agree with the mayor. Reports that Hamas has called for a day of action tomorrow calls for us together to address the concerns of New Yorkers as you receive this information. And I'm proud to work with you, Mayor, and our Commissioner Caban as we update New Yorkers. But we first want to emphasize something that is simple and it's non-negotiable, that the safety of New York's Jewish communities is not up for debate. We will stand in solidarity with our Jewish friends and neighbors today, tomorrow, and every day. There is no call to violence that will shake that conviction, and there's no evil we are unwilling to confront. Before I discuss the security measures we're adopting in the state of New York tomorrow, let me tell you what we've done briefly already to protect the citizens of our state. Immediately following the attacks on Israel Saturday morning, we directed the state police to work with local law enforcement, especially here with the NYPD, to up our local patrols and outreach. Yeshivas, synagogues, and museums, cultural institutions, places that were deemed vulnerable in the city and throughout the state. Constant communication with our federal partners, state intelligence experts as we monitor any potential security threats. I physically visited our New York State Intelligence Center in Albany to get an in-person briefing. Speaking regularly with the White House, in fact, I have a call momentarily with the White House, the Department of Homeland Security, Department of State for the latest updates. And as the mayor has been doing outreach to our community groups, religious organizations, the Muslim community, the Jewish community, and also responding to any credible threats. But we all have to be clear. There is currently no intelligence showing any active threats in New York. That is the entire state of New York. But in a moment fraught like this, we will continue to exercise elevated vigilance and impose measures to deter any potential violence. Let's talk about what we're planning to do in response to tomorrow's elevated threat. We fully activated our Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Office of Counterterrorism. State police have been fully activated. We have a strong presence throughout the state, as well as here in the city. We're prepared to support NYPD at our Joint Operations Center. And if we need them, we have the resources of the New York National Guard and our Joint Task Force Empire Shield ready to be activated. The National Guard is already directed to patrol key transportation hubs. We've been in contact with the MTA, the Port Authority, to ensure that they also have heightened their security measures. Our hate crime task force is on high alert and will help investigate disturbing incidents as necessary. We want to reiterate to New Yorkers, there's no reason to feel afraid. No one should feel they have to alter their normal lives or their routines. And indeed, when we change our behavior, without a serious, credible threat, then we're letting the terrorists win. I want all New Yorkers to feel confident going to a synagogue, going to school, walking to the streets of New York and throughout our state over the next few days. And those who seek to use Hamas's violence as justification for violence of their own, we have no tolerance for your hate. I condemn violence of every kind in New York. And I want to be clear. When I say every kind, that's exactly what I mean. I am outraged at reports of violence or threats against Jewish New Yorkers, including a reported incident where an Israeli student was assaulted on their very own college campus. And I have zero tolerance for hate directed towards Palestinian New Yorkers, a community that is also cherished and respected in our state. Last night's reported attack in Brooklyn of a Palestinian New Yorker is also completely unacceptable and reprehensible. Public safety will